I'm going to start talking to primarily the parents today. And I always love doing that. I'm a parent myself. I have two kids, 31 and 29. Oh God, 32 and 29. And both of them actually studied at the Center for Liberal Arts in 2006, 2008, when we started with the diploma. My colleagues still make fun of me that when we started with India's first formal diploma program, my kid was the first scapegoat uh, who came in as a guinea pig into that program. Yes, and actually, I feel that there was therefore a very emotional motivation for being strongly connected to what is it that young students need today. And I think this is a question that we've been battling with for the past over 20 years. Because in the past 20 years, the world has changed so much. Now, of course, it's changed diametrically in ways that we never imagined, but change was already happening. And technology had become slowly playing a bigger and a bigger role in our lives. Careers that, for example, my husband and I never dreamt of and thought of when we were growing up, suddenly had become very popular. And therefore, our experiences when we were in college and when we made choices suddenly didn't look so strong as experiences that would help us try and solve our children's decision making process. And I think that's one of the biggest changes that has happened. That our style of parenting and our style of helping students and our children make decisions needs to necessarily be very different from the way we grew up. So therefore, if we are planning to style our parenting on the way we were brought up, then probably it isn't going to work for everyone. The way we made decisions in terms of disciplines to go in for and initial career choices are probably not going to work for our children because their world and our world today is very different from the world that existed 20 years ago. Having given that very brief explanation as to why I thought it's important, and my team also thought that it was important to talk to parents, is that while children are becoming, or young adults, they don't like to be called children nowadays, young adults are becoming more and more clear and articulate about what they want, what they don't want, choices they do want to make. They want to be involved uh, in decision making that happens in the family. uh, I don't remember, for example, ever being involved or wanting to be involved in purchases that my family made. I don't think I really cared about the refrigerator that came in, or when television came to India. I was in the 12th standard and we bought our first television. I don't think I wanted to be involved. Whereas today, children as young as 6 and 7 and 8 have an opinion. They have opinions on brands. They feel that brands reflect who they are as families and they want to be involved. So, obviously, they want to be involved and they want to be primary decision makers when it comes to their own choices related to education and career, which is actually going to decide the kind of life that they're going to lead. Having said that, the reality also is that our young adults, unlike some other countries and cultures in the world, are also young adults that parents take care of and continue to take care of, sometimes even till they get married or get jobs and leave homes and go away. Parents in India pay for the fees. Parents in India pick up the slack. Parents in India do not ever feel that 18, 22, 25, and my responsibility is over. It's a responsibility that continues uh, even till 60, for example. My mother still wants to know what's happening in my life and still has advice to give me on how I need to solve my problems. So this is a special webinar session focused on parents. We're going to try and talk to parents. We're aware that there are students sitting in with their parents, and obviously what we say will make sense to them as well. But the focus is going to be from the parents' point of view. What do parents look for when they're helping their children look for educational programs? What do parents want when they're looking at their children from an education point of view? What do parents want when they start evaluating and analyzing the link between undergrad education and postgraduate education, or undergrad education and a career? How do parents respond to the given changes that are taking place in the world today? As a parent today, do I feel stressed when I look at my own job, when I look at my own career, when I look at my own industry? Does technology scare me? If I'm not in the IT or the ITES sector, then maybe. So, as an entrepreneur or as an employee, someone who's working or someone who's working at home, the world doesn't necessarily seem like a stress-free, happy zone anymore. And we worry for our children because we're also very aware that the world is going to only become more complicated. Harish, if you could pin Ahan's presentation and not yours, then parents can go back to seeing the presentation. Yeah, so Harish, just go and pin on presentation into brackets Ahan. So this is the background. The background is that the world is changing. And I'd like Ahan to go on, if possible, to the second slide. The second slide, yeah, the title is for parents addressing your queries. Go on to the next one. Harish, are you able to manage? Harish, if you can hear me, stop presenting and go and pin on Ahan. And see how language has changed. This is the only time when I'm talking to people I don't know that I'm so happy and comfortable to say, go and pin on Ahan. Otherwise, there are, a whole lot of crazy, scary pictures that come to mind, and that's not a sentence I would have ever said. But technology has taught us new words. So someone, Soumya, I think now it's Harish is still presenting, but while Harish is presenting and trying to get off of that, and maybe Bharat, Yash, if you're able to send him a private message, you might want to do that and help him to understand what he needs to do. Let me spend a few minutes just recapping, because I'm aware that some parents might be new to this webinar. Some might be new to the concept of liberal arts. So therefore, for their sake and for the others as well, Drishya is asking, how do we see the presentation? Just pin on Ahan. Yeah. So one of the things that is important about liberal arts is to understand what it is, to understand where it comes from, and to understand why we talk about it today. Liberal arts is not new as far as the world is concerned. It's a very, very old philosophy of education. It's an education that believed in two primary foundations. One, that 360-degree education is essential for leaders in the world. For anyone who wants to be a leader, a decision maker, either in their homes, in their communities, in organizations, you need to understand how the world works. You need to understand your position within the world. You need to understand how different aspects and different things in the world are connected. Right now, we're living in a pandemic, and we've already understood how a health concern in one country suddenly became literally overnight a health concern and a lockdown situation for the entire planet. I don't think there's a better, and I feel really sad saying this, I don't think there's a better example to give than this, that health and politics and economics and law and sociology and psychology have all come together, each one interacting with each other, and we will see how different nations and different communities are reacting. We're seeing how people are reacting, and we've realized that decision makers and leaders in the countries and the communities that have responded well are leaders who get what's happening in the world. They understand what's happening in the world. They understand that each aspect of the life that we lead is interconnected. And this is a slide that shows you what liberal arts is, that it is multidisciplinary, it is interdisciplinary, it is transdisciplinary. What does that mean? That means that you cannot study only one discipline the way we did, that after the 10th or the 12th you chose science or arts or commerce, or you did after the 12th engineering or law or medicine or hotel management. Now it's not enough just to learn that. You need to learn multiple disciplines. You need to learn the interconnections between them. While you are studying politics, you need to understand what's happening in philosophy and what's happening in science, because all of these are interconnected. If you look at technology, and no better example than technology, look at the software that we work with, look at artificial intelligence, and you will see that the best of software and the best of artificial intelligence is where all of these multiple disciplines come together. So when doctors in remote places are able to do surgeries or give medical advice based on artificial intelligence, it's because people who understand medicine and health and language and psychology and sociology worked together with people from the field of computers and IT. How do you do this? How do you make sure that students not just learn multiple subjects, but are able to put it all together? You do that through building a very interactive classroom with methods that focus on a research orientation. And what is a research orientation? The ability to ask questions, the ability to study why something happens or why something doesn't happen. And not just to observe that an apple fell somewhere and something happened, but to also look at, does the same thing happen everywhere? What happened in the past? Have things changed? If they have, then why have things changed? If they haven't changed, then why have things not changed? Um, is there a pattern? Study that pattern. Study the scholarly articles that people have written, their observations, the analysis. Where has the critique come from? So research orientation is about training your mind to think scientifically. And that only means that you're going to observe things, you're going to study them over time, over different geographies, over different areas and aspects. You're going to try and find connections. You're going to try and find, cause and effect relationships. And you're going to try and therefore make sense of phenomena or events or situations. And all of this helps you learn how to think. Very often I hear people respond very emotionally, for example, to what you see on social media or what you see on television. And suddenly the anchors or the bloggers' opinions become your opinions. And that's not a healthy way to respond to what's happening in the world today, especially where the media is so powerful. So therefore, how do you learn to sift through data and information? How do you learn to think and weigh, evaluate? How do you learn to talk to people to get different perspectives and to imagine? That's critical thinking. And you need to have a program that teaches you this. Now, why have I talked about these three things? Primarily because this is what you're going to need in your future lives. As parents, we know that in the jobs that we do, we're constantly putting together facts and data. We're talking to people from different disciplines and departments. We're working with production departments, we're working with finance departments, legal departments, HR departments. We are working with people who've been trained in different disciplines. And sometimes it's easy to work, sometimes it's not. It requires the skill to be able to bring in these, because traditionally these disciplines don't look at each other as necessary partners. But this is the way the world is. We're asking questions constantly. New problems, how do I solve those problems? How do I look for a solution that is sustainable? I had a solution, it looked good, but it's not sustainable. It's too expensive. It's too heavy on use of resources. So this critical thinking, this research orientation, this scientific way of looking at life, this working with people from different fields, with different data from different fields, this is what we are going to need, not only in our master's programs, but also in our jobs that we do. And the liberal arts helps you do that by, I feel, doing two really, really important things. Looking at how we help students learn. And that, sometimes language is really important, because language tells us the spirit with which things are done. So I started teaching in 1981, and I was a teacher, and my job was to teach. And in the last, I would say 15 to 18 years, I don't see that as my role anymore. Now I feel I'm a teacher who primarily happens to be a facilitator. And my job is not to teach, my job is to help students learn. And I think that is important. And I think liberal arts colleges, with their small classroom sizes, have understood that the methods that we employ in the classroom and outside the classroom to help the teaching learning process are very important. So therefore, creative assessments, no longer normal memorizing, rote learning, ratta maro, as we used to say when we were in college. No longer is that what's important. Is it totally not useful at all, or not valuable? Of course it is. There are still programs, and even within our programs, there are certain parts of our subjects where you do need to learn. By rote, you do need to learn a theory, you don't need to learn equations, but that's only one part. Learning how to think about what we're working with, learning how to see how applications work, how creative we can be in terms of thinking of new applications. So that is something that you learn through interactive classrooms, through very, very innovative and unique pedagogies, methods that we use to help students learn. And I feel linked with this, and this is a part of the interactive co-constructed classroom, that student ownership and participation in the space. If you visit SSLA, you will see that we are a family of about 450 students and another 100 faculty members. 550 to 570 is the strength of our community, of our family, and we all own a piece of it. Everyone has an opinion. Is it painful? Of course it is. It is painful initially to have so many co-owners who are going to come together and say, but this is what I feel and this is what I think is good and I don't agree with this. And democracies, as we know, are messy affairs to manage. But there is a place and a space for students to contribute, because they are ultimately the ones who we're doing all of this for. So this is the first part that's really important and critical to a liberal arts program. And I always say this, and I don't hesitate to say it: choose any good liberal arts college and you will get a variation of this. My goal in life nowadays is to try and motivate parents, and I have to say this, who can afford to invest in a liberal arts program. And it's expensive because the small classroom sizes, the huge program structure, the full-time program, it is expensive. That choose a liberal arts program. And I know you're going to hear from one of our students later on, why liberal arts and why not the traditional 3-year program. But this is one part of it. The second part of it is that liberal arts makes sense today. It makes sense, extra sense today, because of the kind of world that we live in. We don't know what we're preparing our kids for. 15 years ago, I would say we knew. We knew what we were preparing them for. My colleagues who teach in a BBA school or a media school or an economics school or anywhere else, they knew exactly the kind of life that students were going to have 3 years hence. They knew the tools that they were going to use at their jobs, and they trained them for it. Today, that situation has changed. Today, we don't know. I mean, who knew 6 months ago that this is what we were going to be doing? Who knew 6 months ago that this is the kind of world that we're going to live in, and we're going to work from home when we've not been trained to do that? And is the world going to continue to change? It is. It is for sure going to keep changing. And not only because we'll have pandemics that keep throwing things at us, but also because technology is changing really, really fast. And we've embraced that. The technology is now going to be a big part of how we reach out to a large number of people. How we can reach out to a larger number of people in a more sustainable fashion. Technology seems to have become one of the foundations of our future life. AI is going to become a part of our future life. So therefore, who are we preparing our students for? What kind of a company are we preparing them for? What kind of a job are they going to be doing in 5 years? Who knows? And if anyone tells you they know what that world looks like, believe me, they're lying, or they're absolutely disillusioned. No, sorry, not disillusioned, but they're under some kind of an illusion as to their ability to, gaze into the future and have some kind of a comfort in terms of what kind of a world we're going to live in. And therefore, what do I teach my students today? We don't. Honestly speaking, we have no idea that 4 years from now, 5 years from now, what are jobs going to look like? What are higher educational institutions going to look like? What disciplines are going to be in demand? We have no idea. Therefore, it makes sense to have a liberal arts program where you have a specialization, and our deputy director, Dr. Shweta, is going to take you through our program structure very briefly. It makes sense to have a program that has specialization along with a very strong foundation of transdisciplinary subjects that prepare you for an uncertain world. What does this mean? It means that your ability to transfer and move, your mobility from one sector to another, from one geography to another, from one kind of work to another, is so much more better. You are so much more prepared. And I can see that with our alumni, that they can take changes in their work, in their job descriptions, in the technology that they work with. They can move from a banking sector to a hospitality sector to another much better because they've actually been trained for it. On that note, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to ask Shweta to go on. I think the next slide, if we can move to the next slide, deals with, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so let me just put this all together before I hand it over to Shweta. This is our program, and if you could look at the 3 rectangles in that rusty red color: employability, critical thinking, interactive, lifelong learning. All words that will make sense to the parents today. All terms that are extremely critical today. I know as parents, we're all working from home. And believe me, for some, it's been difficult. It's been difficult for them to learn to work from home, maybe with technology platforms that they've never used before, maybe working in ways that they've never used before. So they're learning. A lot of people are going on to webinars and people, learning new things that they've never done before in an interactive style that they might not have been used to. This interactive lifelong learning is something that we help your children learn through our co-constructed classrooms, through the huge experiential component of our program. and to the faculty student ratio, which is 1:20 or even less for electives, majors, and minors. The critical thinking comes in from the unique pedagogy and from the creative assessments and evaluations that we have. And finally, and I think this is the most important, especially in today's times and especially for parents, employability. Will my child get into a higher educational program? Yes, of course. The fact that it's a 4-year program, the fact that it's a liberal arts program, which means, and I must say this, when you talk about a liberal arts program globally, it means, and let me just tell you bluntly, it means your child has learned how to think. Your child has learned how to do research. Your child has learned how to work cross-culturally. It means your child has learned how to work with multiple disciplines in a transdisciplinary fashion, and that your child has learned academic writing. So with a 4-year liberal arts program, is your child going to get into a higher education master's program? Absolutely. Let's go beyond that. And let's look at placements and employability. And that comes in from those 3 teal colored blocks. Hard and soft skills, extremely important. Lots of people that you know have probably not done as well as they might have. Maybe they knew all the knowledge, but they didn't know how to work with people. Maybe they knew how to work with people, but they didn't know domain skills. So hard and soft skills, extremely important. It's the industry need today because industries are changing really fast. Organizations are changing in what they do and how they do it. So they are reimagining their own structures and their own place in society and their own business. And for this, you need 360-degree knowledge and you need core domain knowledge. And that is something that SSLE is good at. So with this slide and this webinar, this recording will be put up on YouTube. You can go back to it. I'm going to hand over now to Deputy Director Shweta Sinha Deshpande. Shweta is a trained anthropologist, archaeologist. She teaches archaeology, art history, and some other history subjects at SSLA. And she also is the process owner of our program structure. She probably knows it better than I do. So over to you, Shweta.
Ma'am Shweta, did Ma'am Zatya? Shweta okay, just called saying that she's having some issues with her mic, so maybe she'll join us in a minute.
Okay. So do you want me to start or would you like to start?
Yeah. Maybe you could just continue talking as coordinator.
Yeah, sure. So Ahan, if we can go to the next slide, and whenever Shweta comes in, she can just poke in and I will hand over. This is the program structure. Dear parents, I'd like you to have a quick look at it. It's a 4-year full-time program. What do I mean by full-time? 2 things. We start at 7:30 in the morning. We usually end for the first years by 4:45 or 5. We have workshops on Saturdays. As you go to the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th year, you might even have optional courses that you can choose for, which go from 5 to 7. I also mean full-time by the fact that the 3 summers that you spend with us are also dedicated to learning. There are 3 major activities, and you can see this at the bottom of the slide. The research project, which is a dissertation, an internship, a 2-month internship, a 2-month community outreach project, and a final year seminar paper. These are 4 really, really important components of the SSLA program structure. And to be honest, I think they have been quite responsible for why SSLA's program structure is well known within India and within the community. I'll be blunt. Nobody comes to SSLA because of our fancy campus. Nobody's coming to SSLA because we have a big campus. Nobody's coming to SSLA because we have a fully residential campus. People are coming to SSLA primarily because of our program structure. It's a 4-year full-time program structure. It's an honors program. And we are known for the specialization and the combinations that we have. We're also known for what higher educational institutions call as visible proof of learning. What does that mean? Visible proof of learning is proof that you can actually take into an interview hall, or you can send people with your CV that, hey, this is what I learned. So if you're applying for a master's program, knowing academic writing and being able to do research is a very important part of the selection process. Something that Indian undergrads are not actually known for. In India, typically, we learn how to do research in a master's program. Imagine you have a dissertation, which is something that you work on for almost 2.5 years. You have a seminar paper, which is academic writing at its best. You also have an internship and a community outreach project that, when completed, results again in a piece of very strong report writing and academic writing. So you have 4 visible proofs of learning that you can actually, and that's what our students do. They send it out as evidence or proofs of, this is what I've learned. This is what summers, this is what they do. So between the summer of the first year and the second year, students might do a community outreach project. Between the summer of the second and the third year, they might do the prep for their research project. And between the summer of the third and the fourth year, they might want to do an internship. That sequence is up to them. But these are full-fledged. So while they may stay with you at home, and that is something that they are encouraged to do, so they can go back home to you. But while they're at home, they will be working. They will be going out and working with an internship or a community outreach. So that's what I mean by full-time. It's 8 semesters over 4 years. Each semester, there's approximately 20 to 24 to 28 credits that they will learn. All the courses at SSLE, I think, except for 2, computers and environment, are all 4 credit courses. Now, what does that mean? Very briefly, because this is probably new to some parents, is 4 credits means it's a 60-hour course, 60 hours in class or with faculty. So it's faculty supervised, faculty engaged hours. And it's 100 marks. Over and above the 60 hours that students spend with the faculty in class, there will be homework, there'll be research that needs to be done, there'll be assessments, etc. So usually it ends up being at least 30 hours more. Okay. So that is it. 4 categories of courses, 4 courses, elective courses. And if you have attended a webinar before, you'd know what I mean by breadth and depth. If not, let me just recap very, very briefly. Liberal arts programs are known for the fact that they have 2 aspects, 2 characteristics. They give depth of knowledge and understanding and experience, and they also give breadth. So if you were to look at a liberal arts program like a inverted T, you have the base that comes from the core courses and the electives, and these are multidisciplinary. You will study legal awareness, you might study the Constitution of India, you might study about diversity and multicultural, you do quantitative reasoning, finance, you might do a course on current economic and business analysis. So you will study around 20 courses that are considered core. What does this mean? It means that these are courses that we think everybody needs to know. Doesn't matter who or what you're going to be in your future. You could be a journalist, you might want to become a biologist, you might want to become a computer expert, but these are courses that everybody needs to know. Teaches you how to think, teaches you how to do research, teaches you to understand what's happening in the world. These core courses are complemented with a variety of elective courses. SSLA has an extremely wonderful basket of electives. We have over 100 electives. They also come from all the disciplines. So you could do film appreciation, you could study silent cinema, you could study law law courses. So, for example, labor laws, the Constitution of India. You could study something from science. You could study something from biology. You could study something from literature. So there's this basket of electives. They come from multiple disciplines. Between the core and the electives, you get your foundation, and this gives you breadth. The depth that all parents are looking for, and parents tend to, and if I may say so, I'm a parent myself, we tend to be sometimes a little short-sighted. We're looking at 3 साल के बाद नौकरी मिलेगी क्या, 4 साल के बाद नौकरी मिलेगी क्या, will my child get a job? Because getting that first job is so critical for us, and that's important, and I want you to continue to think like that. But I also want you to think about, once my child gets a job, how do I ensure that the educational program also ensures that my child will be able to grow at that job or move from that job to another job? How does this education become a foundation for all the jobs and the entire career that my child has over a span of 20 to 30 years? So major and minor specializations give you depth. And what's the fun and the joy of being at a liberal arts college? It is that you can combine different, and the next slide will show us that you can combine different specializations together. So if Ahan can go to the next slide, look at those circles on the right hand side. You've got majors from mathematics and statistics and computers to philosophy, English, media, economics, business, psychology, anthropology, and you've got a range of minors. Where else but a liberal arts college offers you in India an opportunity to choose from within this entire mix? So I can choose computer studies as my major, and I can combine it with a double minor, and I can say I want to do computer studies, I want to do biology, and I want to do business. Because I feel the agro-based and biology-based businesses in the future are going to grow huge. The food sector, the food and beverages, the pharma, the cosmetics, the toiletries, all of these are biology-linked businesses. So those businesses are going to grow. I'd like to work in that sector. So I need to understand biology. I am interested in computers and I'm interested in business. So business, computers, and biology blends together in this wonderful combination. Someone else might say, I want to become a journalist and I don't want to take English because I'm learning how to write any which ways in all my courses. So I'd like to do international relations. I'd like to do women and gender studies, and I'd like to do anthropology. Why anthropology? Because anthropology teaches me about communities and growth. And I am going to get this and I'm going to go ahead. The point I'm trying to make is that liberal arts colleges offer you, and this is again something SSLA is known for, that we have lovely majors and minors. And when I say lovely, it's not really the right word to use, but anyway, I find them lovely because I feel they resonate with business opportunities outside in India. All of these are disciplines which are needed today and in the future. Whether it's biology, whether it's physics, whether it's women and gender studies, whether it's the performing arts, whether it's peace and conflict, law, film studies, all of these are disciplines which organizations are going to need, think tanks are going to need, the government is going to need. If you want to set up your own organization, it is going to need this. Our majors can be combined. All majors can be done as minors as well. So for example, I can do a major in economics and I can do a double minor in business studies and law. I can do economics with media studies. So many combinations, and your child will have to make a choice. So there are 3 paths to getting a degree at SSLA. On the left hand side, you have the first, which is 1 major, 1 minor. This is our traditional model. Some of you may know that last year, so we're entering our 10th year now, offering a 4-year degree. Before that, we had 6 years of offering a 3-year diploma. So it's since 2006, we have been in this space. Last year, we decided to change our 4-year program into a 4-year honors program. And therefore, now we have these 3 parts because we've realized that students have different requirements. Our 1 major, 1 minor, and some additional electives is the traditional format for liberal arts programs. Some of you may want to do this. Some of you may want to do 1 major with 2 minors. Very popular. About 40% of SSLA students today are doing this. Some of you may want to do a double major. A double major means 2 majors, no minor. What is a major? A major is 10 courses as a minimum, with 1 internship of 2 months and 1 research dissertation. You may also, if you want, choose to do a community outreach project in that area itself. So we've had students who are majoring in, for example, computers or media, and chose to do their community outreach with organizations that wanted them to help in those areas. You may want to do a seminar paper in something that's linked to that, but those are optional and those are choices. So double majors would mean you choose 2 majors, you declare 1 as your primary major. In that major, you will do an internship and a research dissertation. For the second major, you will not have to. You want to do a second dissertation, you don't need to do a second internship unless you want. If you look at that quote at the bottom, who's from the batch 22, said that she chose anthropology with biology and psychology. I'm sorry, I got locked off. Something happened to my internet. Am I back? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, ma'am, you are.
Yeah. So coming back to, yeah, thanks. So sorry. I was keeping all my fingers and toes and everything that can be crossed so that my internet and electricity doesn't go off. Yeah, so what was I talking about? I was talking about Kritika. And I was saying that you can do a major, a master's, even in the area of your minor, because we've taken care of that 24 credit requirement. But, you know, Kritika might even decide that this is a great foundation for me, and now I want to go and do an MBA. And that's fantastic. MBA institutes would love to get students who don't have a BBA, because BBA, MBA is, you know, it's just a little more of the same thing. You're not bringing in so much to the table. But anthropology, biology, psychology, with now, a major at MBA, a specialization, is a fantastic is a fantastic combination. One thing that you must remember is that majors and minors are not selected in the first year. We have a 4-year program, and one of the advantages of having a 4-year program is that we can afford to not dilute the teaching learning requirements. Whatever we're promising you, we can try and deliver. But more importantly, we can give 1 year to your students, to your children, to come in, to start the learning process, to start the research orientation, the critical thinking, to get an idea of what they want to do. 17, 18 is a difficult age. It's an age where you're still coming to grips with who you are and what you want to do and what you want to be. It's also a time where you look around the world, and it gives you an opportunity to figure out that I thought I wanted to do psychology, but maybe sociology is more up my maybe that. So explore a little more, and then at the end of the first year you choose. So students who joined in last year for us, 1923, they just completed their major minor counseling. We do that through the entire second semester. We had a number of webinars with them, and now they will make their choice, and they will choose one major, one minor, double minor, etc. Yeah. If Shweta is back, would she like to come in, or should I continue? Can we move to the next slide?
Ma'am?
Yeah. Can I call in one of my students? One of the things that I've been a teacher for many, many years. As I said, I started teaching a long time ago, too many years to count. And for the first almost 25 years or more, I taught at Mumbai University first, and then University of Pune. And I taught in the typical traditional degree program. It was, and I have to be honest here, I wasn't that happy teaching 120 people in class. Towards the last few years of my life at Pune University, I had 138 students in class. And somewhere I felt I wasn't doing what I needed to do. And this isn't why I became a teacher. And it is so difficult to work with the 18 to 22 year, that age group, in such large numbers, in such heterogeneous groups. So that's why I made that shift into liberal arts. But let's hear why students would like to make that change, or why students made that change, and how do they look at the traditional degree, the non-liberal arts degree. So Ahan, so we have 3 students here today with us, Yash Jogrekar, Ahan, and Varat. They're all wonderful students from our 3rd year. They're going to the 4th year. And I'd like to bring Ahan in right now. Ahan?
Ma'am, Ahan is not being able to switch out of his presentation, so I'll be taking this instead.
Okay, great. So this is Yash.
All right. Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. So hi, good morning, everyone. So the reason I chose SSLA was that firstly, I'm from Pune. I was always, I've been brought up around academia in general. Like Pune is a college town. There's SPPU, Ferguson College, all of them with great programs. I was myself set on SLA because, first of all, it's a liberal arts program. I knew I wanted to study different disciplines, interdisciplinary studies, etc. I was not convinced with studying only one subject in isolation. According to, in my opinion, it was always about you have to be able to know a little of everything and your own subject well enough to be a more well-rounded individual. Secondly, SSLA has a 4-year program. This was important to me because I plan to go abroad for my further studies. And the 4-year program is a contribution to 12 plus 4, which is what is needed in most countries that I was looking at, like the USA, Canada, the UK, etc. Further, the very fact that SSLA has a lot of practical learning on top of the theory taught. Like, for example, I'm a student in media. My internship required me to go and actually work in a media house. I worked at the Red Tree Design Studio in Model Colony. And I got to have hands-on experience about what I was taught in the classroom and how to apply it in real life. And that gave me a much better understanding of the subject at hand, what I was learning, what I needed to study, and what it takes to succeed in that field. while there are other programs such as Ferguson colleges, SPPUs were suggested to me by my parents, I opted for SSLA because of all of these factors considered combined. The fact that it's a 4-year program, the fact that it's liberal arts, interdisciplinarity mattered to me. How the core courses function was extremely important as well, because they give you a grounding in basic elements of life that I think every person should know. Further, the classroom sizes, actually, I attended a very similar webinar before I applied to SLA. And when Anita ma'am talked about the pedagogy that's involved in the classroom, for example, my international relations class, we conducted a simulation of the United Nations assignment on international law right now. And it actually helped us apply what we had learned in theory. We know how nations, for example, act with each other, but when it's time for us to make the decision as to how would a nation act, that simulation was extremely helpful to me. Further, given the fact that our class sizes are very small, allows for professors to be able to focus on each student individually as well as the collective as a whole. So I've always felt like my questions have been considered, my doubts have been addressed, etc. And I think that's about what I wanted to say right now.
Thanks, Yash. Before we move on to the next slide, if I could just say that, what Yash shared with you, and thank you so much for being honest and, very frankly telling us how you made a choice. What Yash says is what is true for most students. For most students, the fact that you need to be confident of your education. Recently, one of the students who was graduating this year, she and I were WhatsApping, and she said that I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I feel so much more confident than some of my other friends, because I feel that I have studied in depth so many different subjects, and I've studied their interconnections, and I now know that I can write, I can read critical, detailed information, uh, and therefore I feel so much more prepared. I'm not scared. Is the world and the future uncertain? Of course it is. Will I get a job? I don't know whether I'm going to get a job within 1 month, or whether it's going to be 2 months, or whether it's 3 months. But I do know that I am going to, because I have skills. It's not just knowledge. I have skills. I have the right mindset. And I think that kind of just summed up, what a liberal arts program means in terms of, I talked about that visible proof of learning. I see that in my corridor every single day. Once this lockdown gets lifted, I do hope that you can come and visit us. I have these big picture windows, and I can see students walking up and down the corridor. I see them when they come in as fresh 17 and a half, 18-year-old kids. And then I see them at the end of the first year, and then I see them at the end of the second year. And there's a change. There's a change in the way they speak to me. There's a change in the way they interact and engage with people. There's a change because they are maturing, they're learning, but more importantly, they're getting great confidence from their ability to be able to understand, manage, and learn. And I think that is huge. One of the students told me, and I'm saying this specifically to parents, I remember having this conversation with a student who got some 92% in the 10th standard, in the 12th standard, and he was having some difficulty with some issues. He and I were having a conversation, and I said, why don't you have faith in your own ability to learn, and you'll manage? And promptly came the reply saying that, but ma'am, I don't have confidence, because my 92% wasn't mine. So much of my 92% belongs to my parents, who sat with me and got me to study, who studied with me, my grandparents and my teachers and my tuition teachers. And I didn't do a thing without someone holding my hand. So all I know is I have a great support system and family that got me there, but I don't have in my own core a confidence. And that really resonated with me, which is so true. And a year down the line, the same kid walks up to me and says, you know what, I'm sorted, I'm done, I can manage, I can do stuff. And I think that is so important for us as educators, but also as parents, that we want our children to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet. We want our children to be able to think for themselves. We want our children to become adults who can manage their own lives and who can, solve problems and who can grow and who are not afraid of the kind of situations that they're going to face, either in their families or in the communities and the organizations that they work on. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? Life after SSL. I think Yash is going to speak about this, or Varad?
I'm going to speak about it.
Varad.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, I'll be talking about life after SRA. I know parents have this question, which is very often when they are to enroll their kid into a certain institute. This is one of the questions that haunts them. And I feel life at SRA makes you prepared for the best scenario, and it develops you in a certain way that even when the bubble around you suddenly pops, you're prepared for anything and everything that life throws at you. So starting from an internship, which is a core part of our curriculum at SLA, to dissertation and research projects, SLA provides you for the ultimate after SLA life in a way that it helps you form the basis of your further studies and placements as well. So we have a very strong career cell and we have a very strong international cell, and both these cells help you in figuring out what you want to do after your life. So there are a lot of students, as you can see on the screen, there are a lot of students who opt for higher education after SLA, and students from SLA have gotten placed into Georgetown University, Washington, then London School of Economics, Leiden University, Manipal University in Pune, in India, Hyderabad University, Ambedkar University, and so on. Then they are currently pursuing their interest in their academic field as well. Then in placements, a lot of people have been placed into, very famous places like Uber, World Bank, HDFC, Ernst & Young, American Express, Times Network, and even magazines like GQ, Middle East, and so on. So, I mean, the opportunities that you get after SSLA in terms of further studies and placements is also so diverse and so wide that, I mean, you really, like, right now being in the fourth year, I know I've started to apply to various places for further studies. And I know for a fact that when I'm putting out my CV or when I'm putting out my application or writing my SOP, being a part of Liberal Arts for the last 4 years, it definitely has a greater impact on how universities perceive me, because the whole idea of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary studies is one of the major focal points for organizations which are, into academics as well as are providing you for a job later on. And this idea of interdisciplinary studies makes them, place a different trust in you, because you have specialized and you have knowledge about so many subjects around you. And this knowledge that you have is not shallow, it's very in-depth and detailed. So, I mean, the SLA is literally preparing you for the best of your life, even after you have graduated from 4 years of SLA. So, as you can see, one of the testimonies, Isha Mathur, was a part of our batch 2018. She did her major in philosophy and is currently doing her MPhil at University of British Columbia, Vancouver. And SLA has helped her in publishing papers and present papers in philosophy at various conferences, even during an undergraduate, which is a very unique experience for SLA. And I've already spoken to her multiple times, so she has definitely told me that, life at SLA has helped her be where she is right now, and she's really proud of that. So I feel SLA provides you with a lot of opportunities, and the transition that happens when you go into the corporate world or when you go into an outside world which is not familiar, SLA helps you in a smoother transition, which I feel is not possible from a third year degree, or it won't be as smooth as how it will be after SLA. So yeah.
Thanks, Varad. Thanks for sharing this information about our alumni, and also about your own process that you've started of applying and the confidence that you have. No, I don't know whether anyone's asked this question or not, but I do feel that maybe just a sentence about the degree. Many parents used to ask me this question. I don't think many do that now, but Symbiosis International University is a deemed university. And I don't know whether parents who work in industry are aware of the, the nuanced difference between a state university, a private university, or a deemed to be university. The government used to take care of all higher educational requirements, and the government set up all universities in the past. After the 1960s, when there was a huge need for universities, to be set up, the government decided that they would encourage people to set up trusts, not-for-profit trusts or societies, and they would be allowed to invest in education by setting up universities that would follow all UGC, University Grants Commission rules, and all government rules. So it's as good as a government aided, funded, managed university, because all the rules are the same. That is what a deemed to be university is. SIU is a deemed to be university, and we are established under an Act of Parliament, the Act of 1956, that allowed this. We are not private sector, not for profit or profit in that sense. Today in India, you also have state governments that have allowed the private sector to come in and to set up universities, which could be for profit or not for profit. We are not that. So we are a deemed to be university, which actually means that our degrees are as good as, deemed to be equivalent to any state university degree. So University of Pune, University of Mumbai, Delhi University, these are universities that have been set up by the government, funded by the government, managed by the government, and we are as good as that. So actually, parents need not worry. And if you go to the website, www.siu.edu.in, all the UGC notifications and MHRD notifications related to the establishment of the university are available, just in case you want to check. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if you don't know that, you might be concerned about whether your child will get admission in a master's program in India or not. Abroad, yes, liberal arts makes sense. Everybody knows what its value is. But what about India? Will I get into Pune University? Yes, we do have students at Pune University and Bombay University and a whole lot of Indian universities. And the reason is simple. Number one, the degree is a valid, recognized, accredited degree. Symbiosis also is a Category 1 university. If you look at the UGC website, the UGC divides universities into different categories. Category 1 is the topmost category of excellent universities, where you are allowed to innovate a lot. And therefore, the liberal arts program. We also have at the university, an innovation and incubation setup for people to set up their own industries or entrepreneurial ventures. So we are a Category 1 NAC grade A. So in that sense, no worries. And as far as placements are concerned, to be honest, Symbiosis completes 50 years this year. And if there's one thing that Symbiosis has been known for, it is the fact that it's value for money education and great placements and employment. So the Symbiosis name and the Symbiosis degree carries a lot of weight in India amongst the corporate sector. Some members of our family, while we are one of the younger ones, Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Symbiosis Law School, they're all 48 years old, and alumni are, judges in the High Court and CEOs all across the world. Primarily, Symbiosis is known for giving value education. And that is something that the Chancellor has always paid attention to, that if students are going to come to Symbiosis, then they must be able, their life after Symbiosis must be something that's valuable, whether you want to get into master's programs or whether you want to get into a job. So that's something that I don't think you should be worried about. In fact, I would say you should feel extremely comfortable and happy with what's going to happen after SSLA. Can we move to the next slide, please?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So, ma'am, I am a master graduate from SIBM Pune and working with the corporate right now. So I just wanted to clarify one thing. So you spoke about placements. For this program, are there corporates coming on campus? Do they have a campus placement after this?
So since you work with the industry, let me just clarify what I mean by campus placement. Since you're an MBA student, you would probably understand campus placement to mean organizations coming physically to the campus and conducting interviews or tests, primarily because they're coming to an institute that's offering one similar kind of program where you have probably 30 to 40 students offering the same specialization. Right. We have campus placements, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that the organization comes physically to the campus. Let me give you an example to explain why. Let's say Times of India hires people from us. We have students who study media or other subjects who are interested in a career as a journalist. I might have 20 students studying media. Out of those 20, I might have 5 who are studying media, pol science, and law. I might have 3 who are studying media, computers, and philosophy. The combination helps us and the student identify what kind of jobs they want. And therefore, very often, we are able to offer, opportunities for students to reach out and say that I've got 10 people which your company could be interested in, and the company would be happy to come. And we've had companies come in. But there are sometimes cases where I have 1 student or 2 students or 3 students, and it's not fair. So, for example, Lintas Law wanted to hire from us, and we had 3 students. We arranged for the interviews, and students went to their offices for the interview. So we consider that campus placement. For us, campus placement only means that we are engaging with organizations. We are helping them choose from our student base, whether they come to the campus because of the numbers or whether we go to them because of the small numbers, doesn't matter. I hope that helps.
Okay. Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. The next slide talks about the current fee structure. For Indian students, registration, and I'm just going to repeat this very, very briefly, that the fee structure is 4,05,000 with a deposit of 10,000. Therefore, 4,15,000 that you'd have to pay. International students need to go to that website to register, www.scie.ac.in. That's the website that takes care of all foreign nationals, PIO, OCI categories. If any of you are within that category, which means that you have an international passport, that is a foreign passport, or you have an Indian passport with an OCI card, or you're an NRI, which means that you stay abroad and you've completed your 10th and your 12th abroad. If you've completed your 10th and your 12th abroad because your parents are working abroad, etc., even then you have to go to www.scie.ac.in, and there the fees are 6,10,000 with deposits and non-refundable fees comes to 6,60,000. The hostel and the mess is anywhere between 1,20,000 to 1,50,000, depending upon whether you get a 2-seater or a 3-seater, whether it's non-vegetarian food or vegetarian food or vegetarian food. So those options are available. I should say here that for girls, the hostel is not an issue at all. But yet I would say as soon as you take admission, do book the hostel. We have quite a few seats. In fact, I think we have about 75 or 80 seats for girls. We have limited number of seats for boys. We have only 18 seats for boys. And therefore, if you have a boy and you want the hostel, immediately take admission and fill in that form. But having said that, a large number of our boys stay at wonderful PGs, safe spaces in and around the college, on rental, etc. And that list of private hostels or PGs is available, and we will be able to share that with you. The senior students will also be able to share about rental facilities. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is how to contact us. My number and email is on the left-hand side. My name is Anita, that's my number. Text me, please, because I get so many unknown calls that it's a little difficult to revert back. But if you text me or WhatsApp me with your name, I should be able to get back, or send me an email. That's Dr. Shweta's contact details, and also Professor Sakshi, who's in charge of admissions and registrations, and Professor Atia, who, so Sakshi teaches economics, and Professor Atia is in charge of psychology. They are our team for admissions and promotions. All our other handles are also available. I believe my team has been looking at questions, and I haven't. If Atia and Sakshi want to highlight a couple of questions that you think I need to look at, you can do that. Otherwise, if you've taken care of them, fine. I just saw one question that I would like to take, and that has to do with safety. And that's something that I'm personally very invested in. SSLA is committed to trying to be a safe space, for our students. And by that I mean in all respects, physically as well as emotionally and mentally. Whether it is ragging, which is an absolute no-no, whether it is a safe space for students to express their opinions, to be unafraid in class, to be unafraid of giving feedback, to disagree very politely, but to disagree, or whether it is physical safety, whether it's at the hostels or whether it is in the academic block. There are CCTV cameras, there are very well-trained housekeeping and security staff. Our hostel staff is also trained and sensitized to gender and to a whole lot of other issues that we are concerned about. And therefore, we take pride in the fact that we're committed to it and that we invest in these necessary services and facilities and the training that's necessary for people to ensure that your children are safe here. Having said that, God forbid if anything were to happen outside or on the campus, we have procedures and processes in place to take care of that. We will be taking our sanctioned intake is 100. That 100 includes the reservations as per the law. So we have reservations for SC, ST. We have reservations for differently abled. Those are reservations that we have. We also have over and above 100. We have 2 seats for Kashmiri migrants, and we have 15 seats for international students. So we end up taking about 117 each year. I should say that while we do have reservations for SC, ST and differently abled, we don't always get adequate number of applications. And therefore, if we don't get adequate number of eligible applications, we write to the VC and take permission for these seats to be converted into open seats.
Ma'am?
Yes.
We wanted to just request you if you can touch upon the SET, SAT, the admission procedure. There have been a lot of questions on that.
Okay.
Just like
so we just recently had a university exam, a university meeting. Sorry, my bad. A university meeting regarding the SETs, the dates, the lockdown, and when the lockdown will be lifted is something that we were all concerned about. But the university has now decided a few things, and let me share these with you. And the websites will be updated very soon. The last date for SET registrations and for SSLA registrations is the 20th of May. So you still have 10 more days to register for SET and to register for SSLA. We are planning with TCS a test. The test will be similar to what the SET used to be. There will be an English component, there will be a quantitative component, there will be a maths component, there will be a general knowledge component, and it will be an online test. It will be a test that you can take from the comfort of your home, and therefore there will probably be a couple of mock tests that are available for you to take. This is something, the details should be up in a day or two. So please keep an eye out at the SSLA and SET websites. All the details will be put up. We are looking at a test towards the end of this month. So probably in the last week of May is the SET test, and the mock test will take place before that. The results should be out by the first week or the first 10 days in June, and then the process after that. We are looking at, and we've always started, SSLA has always started in the last week of July, and that will continue. We're hopefully starting on the 27th of July, which is Monday. These dates have, for all practical purposes, been frozen, but I'm just awaiting written permission before all of this goes up on the website. But I'm happy to share these with you, so you could just keep this down. The SET test format will be the same. The number of questions will probably reduce. So we might probably be looking at, yes, if you can look at this. So similar questions. We are looking at one change, that the written ability test, the written aptitude test, which we used to do in the second phase, will probably become a part of the first phase. So what you will have when you sit down with this online test is you will have it in two parts. You'll have the first SET, in which you will have general English, quantitative, general knowledge, analytical and logical reasoning, and these are like MCQs and that kind of a test. And then you will have a question to answer, which is a text or subjective question, and you'll have to write something. You'll probably get around 20 minutes to 30 minutes to do that. So the first will be everyone who's applied to SET, www.set test.org, will get permission to sit for a mock test and to appear for this SET test embedded with a writing ability test. By the last week of May, the test should happen. Then there'll be a shortlisting, and those shortlisted students, scores will be available to us. So you must click on SSLA and you must pay that 1,000 rupees SSLA fee for your score to come to us and for us to invite you for the personal interaction. So the second phase will be a personal interaction that will be after the 10th of June. You will get access to blocking your dates, etc., and it will be online. And then the results will be out, and college should start by the 27th. Someone's asking me why the fees are so high. Valid question. As compared to traditional government-aided programs, it's very high because we're not government subsidized. So when you look at Pune University, Bombay University, Delhi University, the fees are substantially lower, primarily because it's not trying to cover all their costs because it's government funded. If you compare to the private or the deemed sector, then the fees are not that high. What you need to understand are two things. We are deemed to be university, set up by the government, set up by an act of parliament, and we have to follow all the rules. But the fun part about being a deemed university is that we don't receive any funds or concessions from the government. So we are fee financed, which means that the fees that you pay are the fees that cover all our costs. So from buying land, building, to buying the equipment that we use, to paying the salaries, to the trips that we do, to everything that we do comes from here. So when you put that in perspective, then it's not that high. If you compare us to, let's say, a BBA within SSLA itself, within Symbiosis itself, you might say that, okay, we are a little more expensive. Yes, then we are, primarily because our classroom size is different. So where in a typical Symbiosis institute, you might have, for example, 65 students for every course. For us, that's small. I have classes that run with 6 and 8 students, with 12 students. So that personal interaction, engagement, the depth of the program, the number of experiential activities, for that, it is high. As compared to other liberal arts programs in the country, I wouldn't say that we're so expensive. But this is the background as to why that we are fee financed and we don't have access to any government funding or government concessions, which other universities and programs are. So I hope this has helped. Do write into us. Do call us if you have any questions. We're all available. If we can go back to that last slide. Plus, this recording will go up on YouTube, but you might want to just take a snap on your phone with these phone numbers and email addresses. It's also available on the website, and we will be able to get back to you. Today was just a small exercise. I love talking to parents and sharing because I understand what you're going through. I have also, and I should say this, that I've also seen the benefits of liberal arts within my own family. I've seen my kids grow. I've seen them face so many new and challenging situations based purely on the confidence that they have internally, the core being really strong, that I've learned, I've used my mind. I have confidence in the power that my brain and my mind and my talents all give me. And it's not a confidence that comes from who my family is and how wealthy my family is. It doesn't come from there. And I think as a parent, nothing has given me more satisfaction than that. and it's something that I would like to share with all parents. It's a great program, even if I say so myself. But check it out. And if this is what your you'd want for your children, then do join us. Thank you so much for being with us.
Ma'am?
Adya, are we
Yes,
good?
ma'am. No, just a couple more maybe. They're a
Excuse
little.
me, we have not. None of our questions have been answered.
We were just trying to.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy to. Who is this? Okay. Grades of the first year, is that it?
Yes,
There are questions.
yeah.
Okay.
I
So,
have a question.
yes.
Yeah. My question is that, due to this pandemic,
Yes.
if there is a delay in starting the classes, are you going to, start an online course, or how is it going to go, and for how long?
Okay. We are planning as of now to begin on the 27th of July for the first years. And for the
Okay.
second, third, and fourth, we are starting on the 6th of July. We are planning to start online, hoping that we can shift to our regular face-to-face as soon as possible. But we are mentally prepared that as long as required, we will do online. And we're confident of doing that because when the lockdown was announced in India, we were bang in the middle of our last semester.
Right.
I think 14th of March, our students started leaving for home. And till the 20th of April, we had classes. So we shifted very seamlessly onto online, both synchronous and asynchronous, which means that we were sending material online, they were reading online, and then coming back to class. We were doing Zoom or Google Hangouts or Microsoft Teams, using a number of these platforms that are available. We conducted all our assignments online, we did our vivas online, we did our exams online. So right now, my faculty have just completed grading of all the assessments and vivas. And after taking a brief break, they will start preparing for the next term. We will start on the 27th, prepared for online.
Okay.
Okay,
ma'am.
Now
this
regular.
exam that the kids are supposed to give online.
Yes.
Have the dates been set for that?
You're talking about the SET exam?
Yeah.
The SET exam, well, I'm just waiting for written permission. It will be the last week of May.
Okay.
And I know the date. I can say that in all probability, it's going to be in that last week.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for written permission from the university to share that. It will get put up on the website by today or tomorrow. But we're looking at the last couple of days of May with probably, since the system will be different, it's going to be a sit-at-home test, probably a mock test for people to check out things and be comfortable before they go in for it.
Okay. And ma'am, another question we had asked was, is there any change in the fee structure, considering that everybody is going through an economic crisis? Most of us will not have a job post the pandemic, or we might have to upskill ourselves and look at different scenario in the new, times which come after the pandemic. So in this case, are you looking at giving some sort of discount, or will there be any scholarship available for children of the first year? Because half the time, I think at least until there is a vaccine which we can give our children, we will not be in a position to let them start attending classes, in which case about, I would say, 40% of the year, the classes will be online. So keeping these two factors in mind, are you looking at reducing the fee? Because I looked at the fee structure that you have put up, but I'm hoping that there will be some sort of leeway given, considering that we are all, not just people who are in businesses, but also service people, we are going to get only 50% of our monthly salaries for the next 6 months is what we've been told. So looking at all these aspects, is there any possibility of reducing the fee?
So let me answer you in two parts. Yes, your concerns are very valid, and we are aware of them. We've had a couple of meetings in this regard. As Symbiosis School for Liberal Arts is a part of the larger SIU family, these are decisions that are going to be taken at the university level. So I've got my fingers crossed in terms of what's going to happen there. As far as SSLA is concerned, one thing that immediately can be done and can be done at our level is, more installments, longer periods of time to pay the fees. Those are things that are absolutely doable. For reduction of fees, that is something that we haven't actually looked at right now, because right now we're just working with all the additional costs of buying all these software platforms and licenses that are going to have to be bought because of going online. But keeping in mind parental concerns and the economy and jobs and all of that, that is something that's on the table. We are in the process of having conversations about this, and I should be able to come back to you shortly with that information.
All right, ma'am, because I'll tell you, initially we were of the opinion that a liberal arts education and in a university is what we were looking at. But
Yeah.
looking at the costs, it would be cheaper. I know it in the long run, my child will suffer. But really, with this, being in the economic condition that we are in today, there is everyone who's facing a loss of the adults and admission in the hospitals. We've had 2 such cases where we've had to bear 6 lakhs of hospital expenses just now in the middle of this COVID. And we don't know how long it's going to go on and what else is going to happen. So,
absolutely.
I mean, we are crushing her dreams, I realize, if we tell her that no, we cannot afford a university education at the moment, and you will have to go to a regular college. That is not something that we want to do. But if the fees are not reduced in this situation, in spite of having good SAT scores, and my child has really done well, so I can only speak about her. But
there are many like I understand. Yeah, I understand.
We might have to change our decisions in spite of being home that we wanted Symbiosis, because it's close to home, plus it's a beautiful university, a lovely experience. These are some things that we might miss out.
I totally understand. I can't even imagine what parents and children must be going through right now. Everyone is it's such an uncertain, horrible phase of our life. But like I said, this is not a decision that I can make at my level. We have raised this concern, and it has been taken at the highest level. We are having these meetings, and fingers crossed, we should be hopefully able to help in some way or the other. So let me get back to you. But I hear you. I understand. I mean, it's a situation that none of us want our children to be in. So let's see what we can do. We'll try and help as much as we can.
Right. Okay. And ma'am, the international relations course that you have in your this thing, is it going to continue? Do you have enough applicants for the international relations course to be on?
Are you asking about my specialization, or are you asking about the MA program? What are you? I got a little confused.
No. I'm asking about the undergraduates. In the second year. Yes, in the second year they choose their specialization.
IR is very popular.
And will the
IR is always popular.
All right. Okay. So it will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for all your
thank you so much.
reassurances. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I I hope this resolves itself quickly. I hope the vaccine comes in. I hope the lockdown gets lifted and we feel it's a safer place, for our children. I hope we learn from this. I wish all of you the best of health. Stay home, stay safe. And I hope the economy is able to bounce back quickly so that we don't have to make these tough choices that the parent was just talking about right now. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your time and for allowing us to share our program with you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sakshi, let's wait till everybody leaves.
Okay.
Or did you have something to tell them?
Yeah. No. Actually, there were questions on SAT.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay,
So
then would you like to talk about that?
If you can just talk about the SAT scores and how to like.
Okay, so for those parents who are still left, my bad. So the SET form, you still have to go to the website and you start filling out that SET form. The SET form at some point in time asks you whether you'd like to fill in with the SAT scores. And you can put your SAT score in that, and if you feel it's a good score, okay, then you don't have to sit for the SET. College Board will also send your scores to us, and therefore those are the two routes that you get.